In 1991, rock music didn't slowly evolve. It was interrupted. An entire sound, an entire image, and an entire era suddenly felt old. For years, mainstream rock had been built on excess, big hair, big solos, big production, bigger egos. And then Nirvana arrived, not polished, not glamorous, not built for superstardom, but within months, they had done something almost no one thought possible. They made the old model collapse. This wasn't just the success of one band. It was the moment an entire generation stopped listening to what the music industry was selling them and started looking for something real. Before Nirvana, the center of rock music was easy to recognize. MTV was full of bands that looked larger than life. The songs were loud, dramatic, and carefully designed for maximum spectacle. The image mattered almost as much as the music itself. For the industry, it worked. These bands sold records, filled arenas, and gave labels a formula they could keep repeating. Then, far from Los Angeles and the glam metal machine, a different sound was growing in Seattle. It was rougher, heavier, more uncomfortable. It didn't sound like aspiration. It sounded like frustration. Nirvana came out of that world. Kurt Cobain, Chris Novoselic, and eventually Dave Grohl weren't offering escapism in the traditional sense. Their music felt raw, restless, and emotionally exposed. It wasn't trying to impress you with perfection. That was exactly why it connected. At first, Nirvana didn't look like a band that would reshape mainstream culture. They didn't fit the dominant image of rock stardom. Kurt Cobain didn't look like the kind of frontman labels usually built campaigns around. The band's sound was messy by design. Their energy felt unstable. Even their strongest songs carried tension instead of polish. And yet that tension was the point. By the early 1990s, there was already a growing disconnect between what labels were promoting and what younger listeners were feeling. The rock establishment still believed bigger was better, but audiences were changing. A new generation didn't necessarily want theatrical fantasy. They wanted honesty, confusion, noise, something that felt closer to their own lives. Nirvana didn't invent all of that on their own. The underground had been building it for years, but Nirvana became the band that carried it into the center of popular culture. And once that happened, there was no going back. Then came Smells Like Teen Spirit, not just as a song, but as a shockwave. The riff was immediate. The energy was chaotic. The video looked like a pep rally collapsing into rebellion. It didn't feel like mainstream rock. It felt like an attack on it. MTV started playing it. Radio picked it up. And suddenly, the band that wasn't supposed to fit the system was everywhere. What made the moment so powerful was not just that Nirvana became popular. It was that they made everything around them look artificial. Bands that had dominated only months earlier suddenly seemed out of touch. The visual language changed, the fashion changed, the attitude changed, and the industry moved fast, because the industry always follows attention. Labels that had spent years investing in polished hard rock suddenly wanted alternative. Seattle became a symbol, grunge became a label, and Nirvana became the face of a generational shift they never fully seemed comfortable carrying. When Nevermind climbed the charts and eventually pushed past artists the industry considered untouchable, the message was impossible to ignore. This was not a trend at the margins anymore. This was the center, a band that sounded abrasive, vulnerable, and anti-glam, had replaced the dominant model of commercial rock. That's why the album mattered so much, not just because it sold millions, but because it exposed how fragile the old system really was. For years, the industry had acted as if it controlled taste, as if it could decide what the future of rock would sound like. But Nevermind revealed something else. Sometimes the audience changes first, and when it does, the system has no choice but to catch up. Nirvana didn't simply become successful. They changed the conditions of success. After them, rawness had market value. Authenticity became a selling point. Labels rushed to sign bands that could tap into the same emotional intensity, even if they didn't fully understand what made Nirvana different. That's the irony. The band that helped destroy one formula immediately inspired the industry to create another. But even then, the shift was real. Nirvana had broken the illusion that mainstream rock had one permanent shape. They proved that the audience could reject the script. They proved that discomfort could sell. And they proved that one album could make an era feel finished.